Wondering how much you should be paying yourself as an S-Corp owner this year? Today, we're going to dive into how exactly to calculate a reasonable salary for yourself, step by step, so that you stay IRS compliant and tax smart. Plus, stick around until the end because I'm going to share with you one mistake I see business owners make all the time when it comes to reasonable salary that could be costing you big money. Hi everyone, I'm Jamie Trull, your favorite CPA and profit strategist. And if you have elected to be taxed as an S corporation or you're thinking about it for the current year or for next year, then you've probably heard the phrase reasonable salary. But what actually does that mean? And even more importantly, how are you supposed to calculate that? Well, if you've been following me for a while, you've probably seen other videos that I've done about this topic because I have lots of them. And that's because this is a topic that I have some thoughts about. A reasonable salary is essentially the amount of money that the IRS expects you to pay yourself out of your business for the work that you're doing in your business. And that payment is supposed to come before any additional distributions are taken. Now, why do they care about this? Well, because one of the big benefits of an S corporation is that your distributions don't have any self-employment taxes on them. However, your salary does. So while you don't actually need to physically pay yourself your full salary before you can take distributions, over the course of a year, you do need to make sure that you've taken your full reasonable salary. And if you haven't, you should be reclassing some of the distributions you took as salary instead and paying those taxes. But the big question is, what is considered reasonable? Now, of course, the IRS is not going to give you exact numbers here. And some of the rules of thumb that are out there are just completely not based in any actual guidance from the IRS and might actually put you at more risk for audit. So if you've heard of things like the 50-50 rule or the 60-40 rule of splitting between your salary and your distributions, know that there is no actual basis in guidance for that. And sometimes that's actually going to put you at more risk and have you pay more in taxes than you need to. So if the IRS does audit you, here are the things that they're going to be looking at. They're going to be looking at what you would pay someone else to do those similar duties. So what is the market value of the work you're actually doing in your business? And that's going to include things like your experience and your responsibilities and how you split your time between different jobs in your business. Now, if you're like most small business owners, you're probably doing multiple different jobs in your business. So you're wearing many hats. And the IRS actually has a specific approved methodology that is called the cost method or the many hats method for coming up with reasonable compensation. And that's the one that I generally recommend to most people. It's going to be the easiest to implement and to defend. So ultimately, you need to think about it this way. If you were to hire someone to take on your duties, and it might be multiple someones, right? Because again, you have multiple different duties in your business. What would you need to pay each of them? And what role would you be hiring for? So let's walk through an example step by step. So the first step of coming up with reasonable salary under the many hats approach is to actually write down all the duties that you're doing in your business. What hats do you wear? What roles are you actually filling in your business? So for example, you might see yourself as the CEO, but if part of what you're doing is administrative, or maybe you're doing marketing as well, or you're actually servicing clients, right? Then you're not actually just the CEO. And if you were to say you were the CEO and look up reasonable salary for a CEO, you're going to be paying yourself quite a bit of money and having to pay payroll taxes on all of it. So that's why it's really important to dig deeper when you're doing this process. You actually want to think about what are those various roles that fall underneath what you're doing. Now, I usually find that most business owners have at least 5 to 10 roles, if not more, in their business that they're doing. And regardless of whether you would actually hire someone for that job, you're going to want to think about what job you would hire for. So for example, if you're doing a lot of social media marketing in your business, maybe you would hire a social media marketer, right? That would be a role that you would hire for. Whether you would or not is not the question, but we're trying to figure out what those roles are that you're actually filling so that we can do the next step. And that next step is figuring out what you would pay someone if you were to hire them for that specific role. Now, again, it doesn't matter whether you actually would hire someone for this. We're just trying to get a market rate that it would cost you if you were to divvy up yourself and hire a bunch of different people with different expertise. Now, this can be a challenging part because it is going to require some research, and you're going to want to document your findings. So if you're searching for various different roles, you can go look on job posting sites like Indeed to see what types of salaries those are paid. It's best if you can look in your local area, especially if you would need to hire locally. But again, you may have to just use whatever information you can get. There's also the US Bureau of Labor Statistics that has some information that you could take from. So ultimately, you're going to want to research what that role would cost you. Now, when you go through that process, you're probably going to realize that the range of salaries is pretty wide. So where are you supposed to take from? And that's step 3. Figuring out what your specific competency level is, such that if you were to hire someone with a similar competency level in that specific role, how much it would cost you. So for instance, if you consider yourself average, let's say, at this social media marketing role, then you would pick from the middle of the range. However, if you have various different certificates, degrees, this is something you've done for a while, you've got lots of experience, you might need to pull from the higher end of the range that you find. Or if you have no idea what you're doing when it comes to social media, you're fully self-taught, and it's really not your forte, maybe you would pick from the lower end of the range because you'd be hiring someone with less experience. Now, once you've gone through that process, you've listed out all your roles, you've done the research to figure out what you would pay someone for each of those and where in the range you would pick from based on your competency, then you need to do step 4, which is ultimately to create a weighted average. So in order to do that, you're going to have to figure out what percentage of your time you spend on each of those different activities. And of course, it's going to vary. So you're going to want to think about in a normal year, exactly what kind of split could you expect to see? So for example, maybe 10% of what you do is administrative, 20% is marketing, 40% is actually servicing clients, right? You're going to make sure that for all of those roles, it adds up to 100% of your time. And then as a last step, you're ultimately going to multiply the various different salaries that you came up with times the percentage of your time you do that and add it all together to create a weighted average, which is your salary. Now, if your head is spinning a little bit and you're wondering how in the world am I supposed to do all of that? That seems like a lot of work. How can I do this in an easier way? Well, let me walk you through how I actually do this. Thankfully, there is an amazing software system that I partner with that actually can help you walk through this step by step, and it already has all of the data included. Now, I encourage you to stick around and watch this tutorial I'm going to walk you through, even if you do intend to DIY this, because this is going to show you exactly how to calculate this out. So let's jump on into the software. All right, so the example we're going to use is Lisa's Landscaping. So Lisa owns a landscaping company and she's trying to figure out what her S-Corp reasonable salary is. So in the software that I use, I partner with RC Reports for this. The very first step here is to essentially determine how many hours you work per week. Now, on the plus side, many of us business owners probably work over 40 hours a week sometimes. And so the max, however, for the IRS calculation is 40 hours, which is a great thing. That's going to help cap our salary a little bit. Now, if you're not working full-time in your business and say you average about 20 hours, you're going to pull that here. And again, if you are inconsistent in how much you work, remember, this is coming up with an annual salary. So you're going to want to look at it averaged out over the year. How many hours do you work? So let's say that Lisa is working full-time in her business. Then you're going to select your location as well, so that when it pulls the data on these job duties, it's pulling local data. So we're going to say that Lisa lives in Dallas County, Texas. Now, here's the great thing about using a software like this is that it can help you come up with some of those starting common job duties that a lot of different companies and business owners have. So you can determine if you do maintenance. She can basically determine if this is something that she does. Well, she is a grounds and lawn caretaker, so we can add that as maintenance. And she does do some repair work as well. So occasionally if something breaks, she's going to do a little bit of repair work, and she might not have remembered that, but going through this process helps her recall what all her job duties are. So we're going to add that one as well. Then we're going to go to the administrative. Well, what exactly does she do? So she actually does quite a bit of customer service work and even a little bit of admin assistant work. For marketing, she tends to do a lot of the research when it comes to marketing, and she's their main sales representative. She's the one going out and giving quotes. For finance, she does have a bookkeeper, so that's not something that she does, but she handles most of the billing and invoicing and the collections, so we're going to add those as well. And we're going to go through each of these. Again, she does employee training too. So when you go through this, you probably will realize exactly how many things you actually do. Now, she doesn't do a ton of information technology. There's no inventory that she's managing. And then it comes down to management. And here's the thing, right? She probably would have said general and operations manager. And I'm going to show you if she had done just that, what that would come up with. Now, what I love about this system is that when you try to put something like this, it's going to remind you that this is going to come with a higher compensation. So anything from the management duties. So you want to make sure that it actually aligns with what you're doing, right? And you want to make sure you have allocated out all of those other lower level tasks, because that's going to help keep your salary from getting really high. And remember, higher salaries equals more taxes. So let's say we're good with it. We're going to proceed and add that anyway. Now, if you're ever unsure, you can actually go and read exactly what that job duty is. So if you just hover over these, it's going to tell you what they are. So again, you're going to want to pick the closest representation. It may not be perfect, and that is okay. This is all about estimation. Now, if you're wondering though, what about all the other tasks, right? My business maybe isn't actually represented here. The things that I'm mainly doing in my business aren't showing up on any of these. That's okay. These are more the things that you're doing working on your business. And then we're going to get to how to find more of the specifics of what you do in your business. So a lot of people might be worried that they have a very technical job and it's not going to show up here. I'm going to show you where you're going to find that. So that's actually going to come in the next step. So step 3 is actually business tasks, and this is where you can enter in a task name. So for Lisa, she actually designs a lot of the landscapes. So I went ahead and just put in some keywords that help me find various different roles that could fit for her. So again, things like putting in landscape as a landscaper, this is exactly what she does, a ton of landscape architecture. So we want to make sure that we're adding that. She also serves as the foreman most of the time for her clients. So we're going to add that as well. And you can see that you can put in various different things here that are going to help you find those more specific tasks. And the great thing is this database is massive. So again, while it may not have everything, it's probably going to have tasks that are similar to what you do in your business. So it's just a matter of searching around to find something that fits as close as possible. Then we're going to come over to the tasking and proficiency. So like I said, we need to figure out, okay, how proficient are we in that? If we were to hire someone of our similar caliber for this role, what would we have to pay them? Where in the range is it going to pick that salary from? The low end, the high end, or the middle of the range? So I always caution people, you don't need to put, I know we all love, sometimes I get reports that are all, on the high end. And we need to remember that it's okay that some tasks in our business we're not trained for. We're just doing them because there's no one else to do them. So it's okay to be average or below average or even low in certain tasks. And remember, this is for IRS purposes, not for marketing purposes, right? Your clients are not going to see this. They're not going to judge you about it. So make sure that you're not accidentally inflating your salary and therefore your taxes by going really high here. And this is also the step where you're going to figure out how much percentage of your time are you spending on this, right? So there is a time allocation part of this. We're going to allocate out the 40 hours a week that we do. Now, I've started going through this, and the cool thing about this report is as you do this, it's going to show you the split. So again, we want to get to 100%. It's not even going to let you go to the next task until you get 100% here. So because I've only got 72, I'm going to go back and adjust some of these that I've put in and add a little bit of time to each of them. So I just finished off the report. It literally took me less than 10 minutes to do. And now it has actually given me an estimated reasonable compensation. And not only that, it has given a lot of information in here. We have some great charts and graphs, which I'm an accountant. I love some charts and graphs that show you the split out. But it's also going to show you all the detailed data. And again, if you are ever under IRS audit, this is what you want to be able to hand over, right? We don't want to say, oh, I came up with my salary because of the 50-50 rule or the 60-40 rule or something like that. We want to hand over something that shows we have put some thoughtful analysis into coming up with that number. Now, there's one more thing that I want to point out here as well, because this isn't just about having IRS ironclad documentation in case you're ever audited, although that is a great thing. It's also about making sure you're not overpaying your taxes. So one thing I see a lot of people doing is, let's say they're doing this on their own, and rather than go through this detailed analysis, they are picking, let's say, the general and operations manager. So in this case, let's say Lisa just said, okay, I'm a general and operations manager for a landscaping company. What should my salary be, right? And if we go look at this report, we can see that the average hourly wage for that is the highest one on that report. The hourly wage for that job is $52.87. So if you were to actually calculate out, and I'm going to do it right here, $52.87 times 2080, that's how many hours in a year she works, it would have come up with a salary, hopefully y'all can see that, of $110,000 or so, right? Versus the roughly $60,000 that this report came up with. So what does that mean exactly? Remember, reasonable salary is what we need to pay ourselves before we're paying out those distributions. So we need to make sure we have enough to pay our full reasonable salary. Well, that's an extra $50,000 in reasonable salary that we would be taking. And if we take that extra $50,000 times the 15.3%, again, this is a back of the envelope calculation, but it can be really helpful for illustrative purposes, that's an extra $7,600 in taxes or so, right? So again, you'd want to do a full calculation to see, but it's going to be significantly higher of a tax burden if you just took that one roll and researched it. So sure, it's an easier way to come up with the amount, but you're going to be significantly overpaying in taxes. And all of this is why I highly recommend going through this process, getting an actual report. It is going to be useful for so many reasons. Now, if you're interested in getting one of these reports, then definitely go to jamietrull.com/RC reports. Some accountants charge into the thousands of dollars for this. I do not, and I personally review each and every one of them. So if you want to get my personal insights on this and have access to this amazing platform to be able to run your own reasonable compensation study in 15 minutes or less, I highly recommend going and checking it out. And if you're an accountant or bookkeeper watching this, and this is something you would love to have for your clients, definitely reach out and we can talk about how we can partner up. You can find all the information down below. Now, if you want to dive deeper into S-Corp payroll and tax strategy, I do have a full free masterclass that you can sign up for right now at jamietrull.com/salary. And while you're here, you might be interested in this video next, which talks all about the hidden costs of having an S corporation. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. I'll see you next time.